Hey everyone, this is Kevin, your failed journalist, and I can't sleep right now. I've been doing a pretty good job at getting to bed early most nights. However, something happened today, technically yesterday, because this is a little bit beyond midnight when this is going up, that has just kept me awake and worried. And granted, in the grand scheme of things, maybe it's not even that big of a deal. There's certainly real problems in the world. There's certainly people who have far bigger concerns. They're losing their jobs. They don't have health care. There are so many bigger things in the world than what I'm about to discuss, and yet this has bothered me enough that I can't sleep. Hey Naz, how you doing? Nice to know you subscribe. We're here, and that is what's going on with AMC theaters and their deal with Universal Studios. Now, I'll briefly recap because there's not much to recap. But AMC Theaters, who went to war with Universal Studios over a release of Trolls World Tour. Trolls World Tour was supposed to be going in theaters on April 10th, and it would have been a standard theatrical release. However, COVID 19 hit, and because all the marketing dollars had been spent on it, Universal released the movie straight to digital on demand and the select few movie theaters that were open. Now, I, for the record, did not rent Trolls World Tour on digital. Me and my wife went to a drive in theater to see it. That's probably not super important, but that is what I did because I did not want to encourage this release. Now, a movie makes almost $100 million in digital sales. Not enough to cover the cost of this movie. They lost money. Trust me on this. Even if they got more of the cut from the digital sales than the theatrical sales, guess what? Trolls World Tour cost $150 million to make. It costs about another $100 million to market. They did not make money on this movie. And yet, for some reason, that showing was strong enough that Universal said, hey, in the future, we're going to do this again. We're going to do it in theaters and we're going to do it on digital at the same time. AMC rightfully said no and barred Universal Pictures. That's literally what they are. A movie's called a picture from being in their 1,000 plus screens. Now, there's been some debate since that happened whether or not Universal had the cards or the clout to do that. I would say that they did because here's the thing, most money is made in the theaters. In fact, the success of Trolls World Tour is even a dubious one. As one analyst put it, yes, Trolls World Tour did make a little over $100 million. But who's to say it would not have made over $100 million in digital sales, plus whatever it would have made in theaters? And that's kind of the crux of the argument and why I think Universal and AMC, this deal may have potentially just doomed the theater industry. And it probably even doomed the studios, even to a certain extent. Now, when this news hit, I was doing the podcast of the Apptrepreneur show and was able to have like a first reaction. And my initial reaction was not positive per se, but I was kind of like thinking like, why would they do that? And I've come to the conclusion, and we may actually find this out, that AMC made this deal because unlike the other movie theaters, AMC has a digital platform to release movies. I suspect, could be wrong, but I suspect that AMC made this deal because they could show the movies in theaters and then afterwards it's going to be exclusive to AMC on demand for a little while. Thus, AMC partakes in the profits. there is no guarantee that other studios will follow suit. And there's no guarantee that this little experiment can even last long term. There's so many unknowns about this. First of all, we know that Disney, being the smart ones in the room, are not going to be doing this anytime soon. You're not going to be seeing Black Widow in theaters for 17 days, only to go to pay premium video on demand a couple weeks later. That's not going to happen. If you think Tenet is going to play in theaters for 17 days, Christopher Nolan's going to say, "Over my dead body." And if what I suspect is true, because keep in mind, there's no major Universal movies coming out till next year, so we won't really know what the details of this deal are until 2021, most likely. But if you think Regal and Cinemark are going to sit by and watch Universal movies play in theaters for 2 weeks and then go exclusively to a streaming service from their competitor and still show those movies, I'm sorry, I don't think Regal or Cinemark or Harkins or any of those theaters are going to play by those rules. In fact, it's going to be interesting because Universal may have actually alienated half of the movie screens out there with this deal. So we don't know exactly what's going to play out. And again, movie theaters are still where the bulk of the money comes from. And here's where I get concerned. Because I've been reading comments. I actually went back on Facebook to read various comments. I'm even reading some of the comments here where people say that AMC was in danger of going bankrupt, which is true. I don't deny that AMC's in a tough position, and I am a shareholder of AMC and Cinemark for that matter. So I sympathize that desperate times call for desperate measures. This might have been too desperate for the long-term damage this is going to do, and we're going to explain what that is in a minute. I've read that people say, realistically, movies only make their money in the first 3 weeks, so you know what? Why cry over spilt milk? And, a lot of people are just not seeing the bigger picture that the reason Universal wants their movies to go to theaters and then almost straight to digital is to save pennies. They don't want to launch two marketing campaigns, one for the theaters and one for the digital and Blu-ray release. They just want to get it all done right away. Also, they do get a bigger cut from the digital distribution. So during the first few weeks, they collect somewhere between 90 to 70%. But then after week 4, they start collecting 60%. So they're collecting less. Well, they would like to go switch it while it's still kind of a hot property, move it to digital, and collect their 75 to 90%. So that's why they're thinking this. But as someone who has been around for a little bit longer than I would like to admit, this is so short-sighted. And I'm kind of amazed that Universal does not see how this totally cannibalizes their business. Now, here's the thing. I was alive in the 90s. And when VHS was still new-ish, but established at this point, you believe it or not, most movies, it took a whole year before when they went from theaters to VHS. There was like 6 months to a year before you could buy that tape. They made a bulk of their money in the theaters. They were going to make as much as they could in the theaters, and then you had to wait several months, and then you could essentially print money by selling the movie again. That's how it used to work. I remember that. I remember The Lion King coming out in July of 95, or was it 94? I think it was 94. And then in 1995, I think in April, you could buy The Lion King on VHS. It was a Long, excruciating wait. It was so long, in fact, that when Disney re-released the movie in December, we begged our parents to take us to see it again because it had been a few months since we'd seen The Lion King, and they took us again, and Disney just raked in more money. But keeping that movie off store shelves for a while made the movie more valuable. And by the way, it also catapulted it into one of the best selling VHS tapes of all time. Now, fast forward several years later, the DVD market is booming, and there's a particular movie that was also a game changer. And I was going to school at the time to film class, and this movie was brought up. It was a movie called Tears of the Sun, starring Bruce Willis. Now, Tears of the Sun was not a box office hit. It really wasn't. But here's the thing, at that point, DVD had been established, and some movies were making more money on DVD than they were in theaters. So 1 week after Tears of the Sun opens and it's effectively considered a bomb, there is an announcement made that it's coming to DVD in 30 days or something crazy like that. It was like it's and it freaked everyone out because here's the thing, it set a precedent that, you know what if a movie underperforms at the box office? It's going to go straight to DVD. Well, that's going to condition people to not see anything in the theaters if it's going to come to DVD like 30 days later. And that ultimately led to the theaters agreeing to a 120-day window, which eventually got shortened to 90 days. And here's the thing, since then, windows have gotten shorter, and if people, including the studio heads, think that shortening the window makes a movie more profitable, it doesn't. In fact, if anything, it makes the movie less valuable because people catch on. Because here's the thing, it especially started taking its toll on like Disney movies, for example. A Disney movie would come out. The first weekend it'd be hot. But what if it takes like 2 weeks for you to get around to seeing it? Maybe 3. At this point, families are thinking, you know what? If I wait another 60 days, I can buy this movie. And I can save money. And we can watch it as many times as we want. That's what happens. Now then, what do you think happens when you more or less cut the movie theaters out? Let's play out a likely scenario for this 17-day window. I believe that at first it will be financially successful. The people who want to see these movies in theaters will, and the people who would prefer to stream stuff, well, they will also get to buy a digital, or they will rent the movie digitally for $20 and watch it at home. It's convenient for them. But what happens after that novelty wears off? Because I will tell you one movie I did purchase premium on video because there was not a single movie theater showing it. I did buy Scoob digitally. And 1 month later, it was on HBO Max. Part of the subscription I could watch for free. And you know what that told me? That told me, well, if Warner Brothers releases something on a premium video on demand, don't buy it because it's going to be on HBO Max relatively soon. So here's what's going to happen. For a brief period of time, this will be a successful model, but then people will be taking internal notes about when these movies pop up on a streaming service. We're not talking about Netflix. It could be Peacock, it could be HBO Max, whatever. And once they realize, they get into that habit of like, hey, this is going to be essentially free. If I wait 2 months, they will wait that 2 months and they won't pay anything. Shortening the window devalues your product. It absolutely devalues your product. The theater was already struggling with this because if you waited more than a couple weeks to see a movie, a lot of people would say, I'll just wait and I'll buy the DVD or the Blu-ray when it comes out. Now, it's not even that. They're going to be like, okay, it's going to be in theaters for a couple weeks. Then I could buy it on digital. Or I could just wait another month, maybe two, and I can watch it for free. And here's the thing, that those HBO Max subscriptions and the Peacock subscriptions especially, those do not make the studios money. They're pennies on the dollar. Every person who I've talked to who works for a studio tells me streaming is pennies on the dollar. It's nowhere near as profitable as people think it is. I mean, I think they deep down know it's not profitable, but they don't want to admit that because it's like, hey, they would rather think that paying $10 a month and watching as many movies as you can is fiscally stable rather than admit that this is built on a deck of cards and it's not sustainable. Peacock and HBO Max are not making their money off subscriptions. They're making their money off data. And even then, who knows how much. But this becomes the norm. You could actually at one point start saying goodbye to big budget movies. Do you think Universal is going to spend $200 million on a Fast and the Furious movie or a Jurassic World movie if it's going to be basically given away a month later? That's just not how this works. And I'm really concerned about it because, I mean, we could say that right now, well, Universal will be smart about this. Movies like The King of Staten Island, those are the types of movies that will go to theaters for 2 weeks and then go to digital on premium video on demand. They're not going to take Jurassic World 2 or 3, I think it's 3 that's coming out, and put it in theaters for 14 days and then ship it off to digital. No, they'll keep that movie in theaters at least 40 to 60 days. But will they? Because again, you're conditioning people, you're training them now, say, hey, guess what? This is going to be on, you can watch this in your own home in a couple weeks. And at first, people will do that and they'll buy it digitally. But they'll start taking note of when it starts hitting a Peacock or an HBO Max or a Netflix. And if it takes like maybe 1 or 2 months after the digital, it's like, so wait, as the 90-day window is no longer after 90 days, you have an opportunity to buy it for yourself. Now the new norm is if you wait 90 days, it's free. It's free. This is not a good situation for the theaters. It's not a good situation for the studios. I don't even think it's a good situation for the movie fans, those or the casual moviegoer who will be giving up a great theatrical experience potentially in the name of saving a few bucks. Yes, obviously we could have watched Sonic the Hedgehog early at home. We didn't know COVID-19 would happen, but we could have watched Sonic at home early. But you know what? When we went to, I saw it twice in theaters. Once with me and my wife, and then we took the niece, the nephews, and their parents, and then their parents invited a couple of their friends over and her sister. It became like a big group thing, and then we had dinner afterwards. And that's a kind of experience that you pass up when you think to yourself, well, we could see a movie like Sonic in theaters. We could pay $50 for the family, or we could wait a month and stream it for free. Yeah, you're saving money, but you're also not getting an experience out of it. So this does not work for anyone, in my opinion. I think the window should be getting longer, not shorter. I think that you should treat movies like they're valuable. And that's one thing about streaming I really do not like. I do not like that streaming devalues everything, and it really does. I even have a friend who, when the Criterion channel launched, and I love the Criterion channel, the Criterion channel launched, he said, okay, I'm not buying Criterion discs anymore. I'm just going to stream it all. But those Criterion discs have a lot of love put into them, and it's special when you open them and reading the booklets and pouring through the special features and looking at the artwork. That's all valuable in my opinion. And by making the Criterion channel, I know they have to do it to be competitive, but it also devalues their own product. And I don't think consumers are necessarily right when they say this is a better experience for me. No, it's not um, a better value for them. It just isn't. They like to think it is because it's convenient, but convenience comes with a huge cost. So now, who knows if this will even succeed? Because right now, Universal is the only company that's made a deal like this. And I'd like to remain a little optimistic that the other studios might not be so quick to want a deal like this, except for Netflix. Netflix will probably jump on AMC and say, "Where can we get that deal?" But I know that Disney will not want to shorten the window. Disney will want to treat their movies like valuable things, even though, ironically, they make probably the most disposable movies currently. I don't know where Warner Brothers would stand on this. I don't know where Paramount would. I would like to hope that most studios would see that this is financial suicide in the long term. And I'm also going to be curious, what is Regal and Cinemark's reaction to this going to be? Because the deal is almost a moot point. It could definitely work out for AMC if, hey, AMC On Demand is the exclusive home for these theatrical movies after 2 weeks. But if Regal and Cinemark aren't getting a cut of that, then guess what? They won't show Universal movies. That goes against their principle, and then Universal has pissed off half of the movie screens in the nation. Can they afford to do that? And who knows? Maybe this will not make the money that they think it is, and they will back off. So, and the sad thing is we won't really know until next year because Universal doesn't have a whole lot on the docks for the rest of the year. I think this deal was made in haste. Now, as people pointed out, AMC is not in not a great financial situation. Maybe they felt like they had no choice but to make this deal for an influx of cash. Who knows? And maybe next year they might not be so willing to renew the deal. I don't know. We just do not know what this is going to look like. But it feels like a really bad idea. And I'm not going to lie, I should not admit to this, but I cried a little. I cried like fearful of what's going to happen to the movie theaters after this point. But I'm going to hold out a little bit of hope that it is not as successful an experiment as they think it will be. Because again, on paper, it sounds great. Hey, release it in theaters for 2 weeks, well, 3 weeks, 3 weeks really. Then have it premium on demand for another month, and then you can set it off to die on Peacock, where you can sell ads to people. Personally, what I think is going to happen after the first couple movies is people are just going to catch on and realize, hey, you know what? I've got ad-free Peacock. I'll just wait 2 months and I'll watch it for free. Realistically, that's what I think the outcome is going to be. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am wrong. What do you think? I'd love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe. All right, let me check some of these comments. I see that people have been... Thank you for joining me, by the way, so late at night. I have to put that in there in case I want to make this into its own video because I think I might want to add graphics or something later on. So anyway, let's see. Oh, there's a lot of comments here. So, Jay Hart Rick said AMC didn't have a bunch of options if they were in danger of going bankrupt. Well, that's the one thing we don't know. We don't know how close to bankruptcy they are. They said that they had made some new deals to relieve some of the debt. Maybe this was one of the deals that they made to relieve some of the debt. I don't know. I did notice, by the way, my AMC stock today went up and my Cinemark stock went down, so I'm sure that's not coincidence at all. Indie Phantom said, I hope it doesn't kill cinemas, but I can't see them making a comeback for at least a few years. I disagree with that because people are already flying again and they're going out to restaurants, things that people said, and beaches, things that analysts predicted people would not do. I think people will return to the movie theaters. They can't fill it up because of, social distancing, but I think there's going to be a lot of indication that people do want to go back to the theaters. Indie Phantom says, will this matter much to the casual moviegoers that only sees about 5 to 6 movies annually, though? Well, that's the other thing that I think that kind of falls under that umbrella um, problem that I mentioned, where people catch on and they get smart. I think for the casual moviegoer, they just won't go to the theaters at all anymore. They'll just wait for it to stream on Peacock for free or HBO Max. But here's going to be the big question, because not all of these billion-dollar movies are hardcore movie goers. In fact, most of them are the casual movie goers. So what happens when you remove the reason for a casual moviegoer to go see a Fast and the Furious or Despicable Me or Minions or a Fantastic Beasts in theaters? What happens when you remove that urgency? I don't know. So he also said, I've heard that Tears of the Sun is okay, but I didn't see it. Yeah, it's pretty forgettable. I would love to see a source when you can compare box office numbers to video release numbers. Yeah, I'm doing this on my phone, so I can't do that at the moment. But I remember, I think it was Finding Nemo and Lord of the Rings. Those two movies noticeably made more money on DVD than they did in theaters, and those movies made a whole lot of money in theaters. So that's when the wheels started turning, and it's like, huh, maybe shorter windows would be good so that we can get on this cheddar. The previous window is 90 days, and for a lot of studios, it's still 90 days. So here's the other thing about this. I don't know if they can even strictly enforce that anymore. I guess they can, but it's good. But other studios are gonna get pretty pissed if like Universal can carve out a 90-day window exemption, but they can't. So Nancy says Snow White got re-released in theaters many, many times, and so has grossed $1 billion, accounting for inflation. Yeah, well, that's another thing. Like Disney movies, especially, kind of cut off their own nose with these re-releases. Well, not re-releases, but their home video releases, because they used to release their movies every 7 years in theaters, and then when they started releasing them on VHS, there were certain movies that were considered untouchables. These were the Snow Whites, the Pinocchios. Well, not Pinocchio, that was their first one, but like the Jungle Book, things like that. There were untouchables that you would not release on VHS. And then they eventually got them all on VHS. And then when they decided to re-release Disney movies in IMAX, starting with Beauty and the Beast, then they did The Lion King, and they were going to do Aladdin, but the box office returns were very, very pitiful. And the watch the movie at home thing had definitely cut into Disney's re-release pattern. It had a brief comeback when they were re-releasing movies in 3D, but then they blew that by releasing like 3 Disney re-releases in 5 months in 3D, and the novelty wore out very, very quickly. So, that's just the way it was. And now they're in like a pickle, because it's like, okay, so now the theatrical re-releases are not bringing in the money, but now because of streaming, now everything is on Disney Plus. The re-releases on DVD and Ultra HD aren't doing as well as either. So I think this is why Disney, more than any other studio, has envisioned like a you have to we want everything on Disney Plus, because maybe in that respect, if they can charge people $20 a month and just keep have them keep paying it, whether they're really using it that much or not, it's like this is your Disney library now. It costs you $20 a month, and that's really the only re-release money they can get now. Indie Phantom says Peacock TV has a lot in the free window, which I do like. I do agree. I have it commercial free though. And he also says the quality of movies has dropped so much the past 20 years since digital took over film. Well, I do agree that film is much better than digital. In fact, it's funny because Ultra HD, the video format, it's kind of reminded people how good film is, because old film movies look great in 4K, but movies filmed digitally don't look as good. There's been a lot of people who have bought the box set of the Harry Potter movies on Ultra HD, and the first two movies were shot on film. After that, they were all digital, and many people have mentioned, the first two movies, that's a major upgrade, but the other ones, I don't really see much of a difference. So digital's pretty detrimental to the look of the film when you get down to it. Um, so yeah, and some people don't always, some theaters don't show it in film. I love 70 millimeter though. The last movie I went to see that was 70 millimeter, that wasn't IMAX, because Christopher Nolan, all of his movies are film, was The Hateful Eight. It was shown in 70 millimeter Roadshow edition, and felt good to like be in the room and the lights go out, and then you heard and you could hear the projector in the background, and it looked. I just loved the look of film. So anyway, Nancy says, luckily I'm in LA, so the indie theaters have it. Well, that I'm also wondering what's going to happen to the independent theaters. Like, independent theaters especially need that 90-day window to survive. Like, for the movies that they show, they really can't have these quirky movies that you just know are going to be on digital, like on a streaming service in a week or two. Like, so what's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to the Lemley theaters? I don't know, but I think AMC definitely screwed the whole industry with this. Andrew says, why do you think AMC doomed the theater industry? So I was like, sorry, Andrew, can't go into that again. But will be, I think the stream is coming to an end, so you can rewatch the whole thing. It's going to be the first 22 minutes. I'm sorry, I had a lot to say about it. Um, Indie Phantom said, do you think there's a big advantage for Netflix spending so much on some of their films? I heard the next one with Ryan Gosling has a $200 million budget. I really don't. But Netflix does a lot of things that doesn't make sense. I mean, here's the thing. Movies are especially not profitable for streaming services when you just give it away. It's pretty clear that, with a very, very few exceptions like Hamilton on Disney Plus, these movies do not sell subscription services. TV shows sell subscriptions to these services. And even then, Netflix is strange, like how they drop it all on one day. And it's like, if you invest $20 million in a season of Stranger Things for 10 episodes, you could get like a bunch of fans to pay for at least 3 months of your service to watch a season of Stranger Things. But they don't do that. They drop it on one day. And I know a lot of people who sign up for Netflix and then they cancel that very same day because they get the whole 30 days. And they just pay for 1 month and they binge it over the weekend, and that's it. So, I mean, I'm glad that Netflix makes a movie like The Irishman. It tied with Parasite as the best film of last year for me. But I don't see how they make money doing it. I'm really glad that they brought 2D animation back with Klaus, but it was in 2 theaters for 1 week and then they gave it away. And like, where does this financially, how does this make sense? I've never been able to, Netflix almost seems like a Ponzi scheme to me. Like, hey, the more the more people sign up, the bigger the movies can be. But at some point, the money will run out, and it's like, now what? So I don't know. But I don't see how the numbers make sense for Netflix. Um, Thoughts on the San Diego floating cinema? It's a fun idea. It's an absolutely fun idea. For those of you who are not aware, the floating cinema is a screening where like boats are on like water and you watch like a movie on an LCD screen, and it looks fun. It looks fun. It would especially be fun to watch Jaws that way. Talk about like appropriate. But I mean, it's just a fun idea. Who knows? Like maybe things like that will keep the theaters alive. I don't know. No. We might even theaters might even become a niche product where it's like maybe they show classic movies most of the time and people get together to watch those classic movies because they want to remember what it was like. But then that's going to be especially sad because you're going to have like a generation of kids who don't have those memories themselves. So I don't know. So any other questions or comments, folks? I think I can do this for 4 more minutes, and then I'll probably edit this video and turn it into its own individual thing later on. Like I said, I just could not sleep, and I was feeling pretty bad about this news. So I I don't know. Anyway, thank you for spending time with me. I guess that's all the comments and questions we have. So I'm gonna go to bed. But thank you for spending time. Thank you, Indie Phantom. Thank you for joining me. And if you haven't given a thumbs up, please do. It comes in handy. Oh, one more question. Andrew says, "Do you guess the theaters are going to push back their opening date again?" That entirely depends on us. So to answer your question, yes, I absolutely believe they will push the date back again. I really hope I'm wrong, though. I think there is a sense that at some point you just have to open it and you just have to get the ball rolling again. So anyway, folks, once again, thank you. Maybe we'll do more live streams like this once in a while. I do a daily podcast on my Apptrepreneur channel, but this is fun too. So thank you for spending time with me, and I will catch you all later.